Welcome to the Green Ball Show, a chat show for Irish cricket fans. I'm Craig Easdown, and today we're talking about Irish cricket in the 80s and 90s with three very special guests. We have welcome to Alan Lewis.
Good morning.
Welcome to Garfield Harrison.
Hi, Craig.
And welcome to, in England, Justin Benson.
Morning, everyone. Hi, Craig.
Okay. So we're going to start with a bit of a get-to-know-you round. We're going to start with Alan. We'll start with the stats, which a lot of Irish cricket fans will know. You debuted in 1984. You played 121 matches for Ireland, over 3,500 runs at 28, but a first-class average of 55. You hit 4 centuries, 51 wickets, and 35 times you were captain of Ireland. They're the stats, but in Irish cricket there are strong family connections, and indeed your own father and daughters have played for Cricket for Ireland. So from day one in the cot, was cricket always an inevitability?
Well, it was really because, in a sense, my father was an avid cricketer. I, of course, didn't know that at the time. The only recollection I have as a child is I had his pads on, his Irish cap, gloves, bat in the backyard up against 2 drain pipes at 3 years of age. So when you're ferried to every ground in the back of a car every day, like I did with my own, it's interesting you mentioned my own daughters, they were exactly the same. And it would be probably synonymous with a lot of families. Obviously, Garfield has massive family connections. Of the current Irish team, I think I played with 4 of their fathers. So that kind of gives you an indication of the strong roots. And that runs right through a hell of a lot of cricket. But yeah, the connection and the roots were incredibly strong. And I think that's where really we developed our love for the game.
Not many Irish cricket fans may know that at one stage, I believe you toyed with playing for the baggy green as opposed to the shamrock. Can you tell us about your time in Sydney grade cricket?
One thing I don't want you to be is very silly in this interview. I went to Australia to play for a season. It was an overseas experience, but one of the things that I did learn was that probably for the first time, because you never kind of realised it yourself, having kind of gone from second grade into first grade and playing against a lot of good players, that, you know, I kind of, in my own mind, wasn't too bad at the game. And you know, the pitches over there kind of suited what I did, and more the kind of confidence that they gave you playing in the longer game. Like you played obviously all day Saturday, all day Sunday. I batted at number 6. You still came in and, you know, maybe there could be 35, 40 overs to go. You could bat. And then obviously, which probably wasn't realised in Ireland. I probably bowled very well over there, but got a bad back injury. And was learning so much about that, but never really probably bowled as well as I could have, if I'm being absolutely honest, for Ireland.
No, definitely. You held captaincy roles from underage cricket up to the national team, so obviously captaincy sat very well with you. But I've read words like flair and inventiveness describing your captaincy. Is that
no?
Is
that's until Benny hung me. I got the Hendo Benny connection. Suddenly found Louis was jettisoned after I got injured in Malahide, and then they went on to win the European Championship. So that was me gone. I really enjoyed captaincy, and you know, I suppose, and again, Garfield probably alluded to it, like we grew up. Benny probably grew up. We played a lot of 3-day cricket as youngsters. So the Interprovincial Championship we held had a draw in it, and the games could get terribly boring if they were allowed to get boring. So innovation and perhaps flair was part of that. And again, it'd be the one area I kind of think that when you look at it in the modern one-day game, it's the captains that have that little bit of flair, are prepared to take gambles, take risks, that I really enjoy watching more over the 50-over game. Obviously, it's less tactically valuable in T20 cricket, but in 50-over cricket it genuinely is. And but I did enjoy captaincy. I have to say that, and I suppose I did do it a number of times at youth level, and I was fortunate enough to do it 35 times for Ireland. So I let other people be the judge of that, Craig.
Very good. Thank you for that. Now on to Garfield. Garfield, you debuted in 1983, played 118 matches for Ireland. 2,765 runs at 26, but a first-class average of 41. You had a century against Scotland, took 140 wickets, and incredibly, and we'll talk about this a bit later, your best was 9 for 113. So we'll talk about that a bit later. But I asked Alan about family links in cricket. That's kind of an understatement for you, right? You had 3 brothers that played for Ireland?
Yeah, understatement's maybe the right word, Craig. Again, I was like Alan, you know, I have there's 6 brothers. I'm the 6th. I'm the youngest, and I was dragged off to the cricket from a very early age as well. My father and mother were very keen on the cricket as well, but the sons, all played and all played at a really good level. And Roy, who's the eldest, Jimmy, Derek, all played for Ireland before I did, and all had really good Irish careers. And then obviously then I came on the scene, and it was sort of mapped out for you, but it was guided really well by the brothers and the senior guys in Warwickstown, which was my club. And I remember from 2-3 year old we're playing cricket somewhere always, so it was all mapped out. And then I have two sisters as well. So my youngest sister, Joan, she married Eddie Bush, and Eddie Bush then was also capped for Ireland and also played for Warwickstown. And then my eldest sister, Betty, her eldest son, Philip, was a very good cricketer. Her second son, Jeffrey, was also a good cricketer, but Philip also was a very good cricketer. And we all played in a senior cup final in 1979. So those 8 of us played in the Warwickstown senior team in the Challenge Cup final in 1979 and won. So that record will take a lot of beating.
Did your parents not have a telly, Gubbly?
There was nothing else to do in Warwickstown in the 60s and the 70s.
Still isn't Gubbly.
Still nothing else to do, yeah.
You started off as an off-spinning all-rounder, but tell us how you became a seamer for Ireland instead.
Well, up until the age of 18, yes, I bowled sort of off-spin, but mainly focused on the batting. And then the captain at the time at Warwickstown was my eldest brother, Roy, and he came to me at the beginning of just before the start of the season. He says, "With no opening bowlers, will you give it a go?" So that's what happened. I said, "Yeah, I'll have a try," not knowing what would happen. Ended up had a really good season. Took 50 odd wickets that season, and the rest really went from there.
Right. Very good. A good decision. Now, I've got to say that you appearing as a guest makes me look brilliant from a continuity perspective, because in the last episode of this show, we had Roy Torrens on, and you actually got your debut cap by replacing Roy, didn't you?
Yeah, that's correct. It was 1983. Looking back, it was again, I'd opened the bowling for about 3 years at that stage for my club, and Ireland were playing Worcestershire at Rathmines in June. It was the beginning of June. And all the guys were injured. Roy Torrance was injured. John Elder, he was injured. Paul Hughes, who was a great bowler in Dublin, he was injured. Alan Hughes, no relation, but he was also injured. So I think I was 5th choice to play in that game. And so I was brought in as an opening bowler to open the bowling alongside Simon Corlett. So the idea, I think, was that I softened them up and then Simon walked in and took the wickets.
Very good. Okay, now on to Justin. Justin, you debuted in 1993 for Ireland. You played 59 times, over 1,500 runs at 28, the best of 79. You took 17 wickets. And we're going to talk about your best bowling figures of 3 for 45 a bit later. But you also captained Ireland 29 times. Now, you had a different route to the Irish team, to Alan and Garfield. You were born in Dublin, but actually grew up in England. Did your parents have an interest in cricket, or did you find that yourself?
Funny enough, I wasn't actually brought up in England, so this is a good opportunity to tell you sort of part of the family stuff. My parents went straight from my parents were my dad went to Kilkenny College, and my parents met at Trinity. He then went straight to Zambia, and then to Kenya for work, and I actually got sent to England as a 10-year-old to go to boarding school. Right. So horrific experience. Yeah, no, I loved it. I absolutely loved boarding school. and my mum didn't come back actually to England until I was 13, and my dad then went to Saudi and Japan and stuff. So actually, I didn't necessarily grow up in England at all. It was really when I started at school that I started to play cricket. Dad quite fancied himself as a left-arm spinner. He loved the expatriate sort of cricket, but it really was to make friends and do social stuff. So he did actually become the Kenyan umpire actually at one stage. So he was that bad at playing that he became an umpire.
Very good. And you found your way into English County Championship cricket. And even a year before your Irish debut, you were part of a successful Leicestershire side that made the NatWest Trophy final. That side included none other than Ben Smith, who is our current Irish men's batting coach. What do you remember that team?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it's one of those things, isn't it, that poor little Ben wasn't good enough to get in the team. I think he was carrying the drinks. He was carrying the drinks that day. In hindsight, I wish he had played because he could have taken my place because I had the worst match possible, whatever level of cricket you play. I got naught. I got my stump knocked out of the ground for naught. I dropped 2 catches and I had the winning runs hit off me, all on TV on BBC. It was Curtly Ambrose who got me out, so I will at least say that. But yeah, a televised disaster story that was. But lucky enough to play in it, I suppose.
Now, is it true that your Irish career might never have happened without the intervention of people like Alan Lewis himself?
Yeah, we discussed this the other day, didn't we? Yeah, I think Louis knew a guy called Alan Iggleston. He played for Kent in England. I think Louis was on a tour in Cape Town. I think you said. Alan Iggleston married a girl from the cricket club I was playing in Cape Town, and Louis happened to mention, Alan Iggleston happened to mention I was born in Dublin. And that's sort of where the connection came. And Louis gave me a call, and I thought it was some sort of, practical joke or something. But that's how it happened. So I ended up in 1993 making my debut against Australia.
Okay, we're going to move into the quickfire round. Quickfire questions with some quick answers. Now, the first question we're going to ask is, where was your favourite Irish ground to play at?
Clontarf.
Craig, I have 2. The lawn in Warringstown is obviously my favourite, but running at a close second, down Patrick. We played 10 cup finals there and won all 10, and some good Irish performances there as well.
For me, there can be only one, Malahide. I played there. I played
surprise,
there.
Surprise!
And I see what it's transformed itself into now. So I'm still waiting for an invite to go back to go back there. But Malahide definitely for me.
Very good. What's your favourite non-Irish ground you played at?
Very simple, Craig. For me, Lords.
I have to agree with that. Craig, has to be Lords. There's nothing else comes close.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with them both. Just despite the disaster of the final, Lords, everything about it, the food particularly, yeah, amazing.
What performance for Ireland are you most proud of?
Well, it's behind your screenshot there when we beat Middlesex first time. We beat professional opposition. That would be certainly my proudest moment. It's something I always wanted to do, and gladly close to the end it happened.
Good captaincy.
Perfect captaincy, Benny.
Yeah. Greg, 95 at Lords I had against the MCC. We were in deep trouble, and we hung out. Mushtaq Mohammed actually bowled us. Nobody could read him whatsoever that day, and we hung on 95. It should have been 100, but of course, tried to hit it into the grandstand for the glorious century, but came up short.
I racked my brains about this one actually. So I think probably one of the best things I was involved in was the European Championships, and we went. There was something about, we can talk about it later, but we had these young kids, the Patos, the Kyles, the Dokies, and there was a new generation of Irish players was coming in, and for some reason, we just gelled on that tour and had a pretty tough game against Holland, who were a very good side in those days, and we managed to. Iggy hitting a glorious cover drive that he can tell everyone about, I'm sure. And that was probably the highlight for me. It was a great experience.
Who was the most underestimated Irish player you ever played with?
Oof.
For me, I had a long think about this, and interesting character, but Stephen Smith for me.
For me, Alan Johnson, who played for Lurgan, played for Ireland on, I think, 3 occasions. But in club cricket, he was unplayable. But back in those days, he for religious reasons, wouldn't play on a Sunday. So chances to play for the full Irish side was very limited. But he was a class act.
Yeah, a bit like Louis, I sort of racked my brains about this one and was trying to drag up various names, but I settled on a guy who I was really pleased after I finished to see that he actually played and he did extremely well, as would have been expected. And for me, Matt Dwyer, Hills. I remember when I first went to Malahide playing a pre-season game against the Hills, and I just come off the back of playing for Leicester, so I was in quite sort of good fit and quite good nick, and I was having quite a good game batting wise, finding it relatively easy, and he came on to bowl and everything stopped, and I was like, where has this guy been? You know, this guy he properly knows how to bowl. And unfortunately, you know, circumstance, etc. He didn't get to play, certainly when I was there, but I was a massive advocate for him. I was really pleased to see he play for Ireland, albeit later in life, because he was about 46 when I played against him. So I don't know how old he was when he made his debut, 70 odd or something.
Well, you know, the funny thing, Benny, I think if we look back on 97, and it'll be probably later in the show, and we consider playing in Malaysia, Matt Dwyer was, you know, and we talk about preparation and what you were going to play in it there, he would have been unplayable. Would you agree, Gob?
Yeah, he would have been perfect in those pitches. No doubt about that.
Yeah.
Who was the opposition bowler you most feared to face?
There were many, but I'll bring you back, and a couple of you'll probably remember this, but to say I had a brown stain in my trousers as Michael Holding came in on a dull day in Derbyshire in a match we should have won, that was scary. That was. In fact, I'd probably say, Gub, it put an end to one or two people's careers that day when Devon Malcolm said, "I'll come round the wicket, umpire."
Yeah.
As Short Leg was pushing one or two of our batsmen towards. I don't know whether you remember that, Gub, do you?
That was my answer as well, Lee.
Was it? Right? Okay.
Derbyshire in Derby.
Yeah.
I mean, the background to that is interesting, because the year before in county cricket, the batsmen dominated. So ECB decided, well, we're going to change the ball. So they got this ball with a real pronounced seam on it. So we turned up at Derby and they rolled back the covers. And I'm not joking you, the wicket was emerald green. It was the same colour as the green on our sweaters. And we won the toss and bowled first. And we had them, I think, 90 for 9. Derbyshire, 90 for 9. Alan Nelson thought all his Christmases had come at once. And he was moving the ball about all over the place. And they were 90 for 9. And they managed to get 120, something like that. We bowled them out for 120. And their opening bowlers then, when we went out to bat, were Michael Holding and Devon Malcolm.
Goodness.
And Holding was bowled all season off a short run. So when we walks out the bat, he measures out the long run. He's pushing off from the side screens. And it was scary. It's the only time ever, Louis, I have ever been scared on a cricket pitch was that day. And I remember, I remember this, I'll remember it to my damn day. And I'm sorry about this, Nigel Thompson, but I was batting at the non-striking end when Nigel Thompson was facing. And Nigel gave himself a wee bit of room to hit him over extra cover.
As you do.
and the middle stump come out of the ground. It rolled. It lay down again. It got up again. It rolled again. The middle stump ended up beside the wicketkeeper. It was scary stuff.
Well, we won't talk about the catch that went up that would have had them bowled out for 85. And I remember being in the bar afterwards, overhearing Holding saying to someone there, I was worried, he says, at 85, but at 100, but they ended up with 145 because remember he clubbed about 30. Do you remember he said sod this for the game of soldiers, and he clubbed up, and he said at 145. I was worried at 85, but not at 145. But my memory was that day a ball whistled past my nose. I didn't see it. That's the bit that scared me. And all I remember was the ball going in. You probably know, Benny, at Derby, the side screen at that end where he bowled was quite low. Not that that's an excuse, but it hit Barney Mayor's gloves, and I didn't see it. And that was the bit that really shat me.
So, Justin, the opposition bowler you most feared?
I was quite lucky or unlucky. I played county cricket at the back end of the 80s, early 90s, and you could have two overseas players, as the boys would know. And for me, you'd go and play Nottinghamshire, and they'd have sort of Hadley and Rice, and you'd like, what? So a little guy from Cambridge, I had no idea, but I played a second team game, and Alan Donald was opening the bowling for Warwickshire, so that was the sort of level of second team cricket even then. And I literally opened the gate at Grace Road and met Piper, who was the keeper there, and he just looked at me and just went, mate, good luck with that, because he was just come over from South Africa. He was in the second team because he couldn't get in the Warwickshire first team, and he hit me under the armpit, and to this day I can still feel it. And like Louis said, he bowled me two balls that I genuinely didn't see.
On the flip side, what was the best opposition batter you came up against?
Well, look, that's probably easy because we played a lot of international teams because they were the trophy games. But, you know, like as it happens, probably one of my favourite players ever to watch, but he didn't get any runs against Brian Lara.
I think he averaged 6 against Ireland. I think
he did, but we could go into a diatribe of all the great players. Martin Crowe, you could name them all. Like I suppose, you know, he was. I always remember Richie Benaud saying that. Like, who are the fun? Richie Benaud's watched a hell of a lot more cricket than me, but he named 5 of the players, but that he would want to pay money to watch. And BC Lara was top of the queue for him, so that would do me.
Yeah. For me, Craig, has to be Graham Hick.
Okay.
Our first introduction to a young Graham Hick was in Zimbabwe. Was that 87, Louis, was it?
85, 86.
85. And we played them in a 3-day game. In the first innings, he chipped one to square leg when he was on 12. And the catch was put down.
Do you know by who?
320 odd he got in that game.
John Pryor finished in minus 308 for the match.
Yeah.
Benny, it surpasses your day at Lord's any day of the week, and we've reminded him of it ever since. Like, your daughter with the arms behind her back would have held it at square leg. Like, chipped is the operative word. Like it was, and we had to watch him for a day and a half.
The next day, or 2 days after that, we played them in a 1-day game, and we got 280 or in around that batting first. Davy Dennison had a fabulous 90 odd, I think, in that game. Mm-hmm. And we thought we're in a real chance here, 280, 290, we're really in the game. And we took an early wicket, and in walks Hick. And he got 100. He got 100 very quickly. He was about 105, not out very quickly. They were chasing it down. And Michael Halliday was captain, and it was my first ever over in Irish cricket for the Irish side, bowling off spin. And Michael says, come on, have a bowl here. They'll see if we can get a wicket. My over went for 30.
He did play spin well, didn't he? 3
6s and 3 4s for the Graham Hick. He went from 100 105 to 135 very quickly. And the game, the chase downer runs in less than 30 overs. And he was just destructive.
I'm going to go slightly different. Name drop again. For me, I was very, very lucky. I played against Tendulkar when he was 16 for Leicester against India. It was just, he got 100 at Old Trafford, I think, as a 16-year-old, after we played against them. And he came out to bat, and we had a Winston Benjamin, Philip De Freitas, Chris Lewis, Alan, a really top class bowling attack. And he got 30 odd of the best runs I've ever seen in my life for a 16-year-old. But he was extraordinary. And another one for you as well, Craig, is I was lucky. Damien Martin came on a scholarship program, and he was 16 also, and he was one of the best 16-year-olds I've ever seen in my life. He was extraordinary.
Well, after having Roy Torrens in the last episode, that's probably the quickest quickfire round we've had. Very good. Now I'm going to move on to a bit more background of what it was like playing in the 80s and 90s. And Garfield, you played for Warringstown, as you said, and you debuted for Ireland in 83. Just curious, that was obviously during a time called the Troubles in Ireland. What was the cricket scene like in Northern Ireland during that period?
Obviously we're all very, very aware of it. In the 80s, really, the end of the 70s, 80s, when I started playing for the first 11. But the biggest issue was getting to the grounds and getting home from the grounds. You had to make sure you avoided the band parades or the roadblocks or the protests or whatever. Those were the biggest issues. Mainly at that time in the grounds, we weren't really that affected. But we played. The police had a team at that stage that were in the first division, and when we played away to the police team, the RUC as they were known then, getting into their ground was like getting into Fort Knox. It was security checks and identity checks and all that sort of stuff to get you into the ground. But when you were in there, you felt reasonably safe. And but it was, it was difficult times, but it was the travelling was the main problem. But one other story that I'd like to share with you is we played an Irish game in Clontarf, and 12th man for that game was a guy who played for the police. I'll not mention his name. And so I think this was in 1989 or in and around that period. And I was quite friendly with him, and he was met on the border by two plainclothes Garda Síochána police, and they escorted him everywhere and were by his side for 3 days. So everywhere he was in Dublin, they were beside him. So the night before the game, we had a meal, and he said to me, "Look, sure, I'll bring you to the ground in the morning." It was Clontarf we were playing at, and I said, "No problem." So I'm down for breakfast. Met him at breakfast. He says, "Look, I'll see you in the car park in 5 minutes." So I went down. There was an underground car park underneath the hotel. And I went down, and I'm looking around, and no sign of him, nothing. And I'm shouting his name, And the next thing, I look around, and he's underneath his car. And the two Garda Síochána policemen are also underneath his car. And I'm going, "Guys, what are you... what? Oh, we're just checking this out. We'll have to do this every time we get into the car just to check that there's no devices." So I said, "Look, guys, thanks very much for the offer, but if you don't mind, I'll get a lift with somebody else."
Taxi for Harrison.
Taxi for Harrison.
Alan, what about you? From the Republic, travelling north during those times, did you ever think about
the only hardship really was, well, there was one thing that was always stood out in your mind. That was the minute you hit the border, the roads improved. But of course, you had a situation where you'd have a border check there that you could be anything from 20 minutes to an hour at, just coming into Newry there, which was, that was, but, growing up, there wasn't an issue because, obviously there was an issue because we knew the troubles were there, but it didn't really affect games like I would have played with and with and against Garfield, a lot of my other friends, and we would have played schools internationals against Ulster schools versus Leinster schools. So we had a great affinity with one another. But like obviously with what Gubley is talking about culturally, it was so different and very difficult for people who lived in those times there. My father, in actual fact, funny, I think obviously my father's since passed away, but people back in 1969 that we would have played international matches at Ormo, when I think certainly he talked about lying down in the outfield as shots were going across the Ormo Road that day. Probably Gubley, you'd know more about the dynamic of one side and the other, but certainly that was they were ordered to get face down and that was in a sense the start. But we grew up with, but everyone was largely great friends and got to know one another very well. It was we were all one team. We got on well with.
Tours and overseas matches, Garfield, seem to be enjoyable times. You've mentioned the Zimbabwe trip, and there are a few Zimbabwe trips you took. Give us a sense. I know what happens on tour stays on tour, but give us a sense of what touring life was like for the Irish team in the 80s and 90s.
Had to have a strong constitution.
And you better stay up late and perform the next day.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. I mean, look, it was just fantastic. We were pioneers because, up until that time, Ireland had traveled, I think, in the 70s to the United States and Canada for a tour, but really nothing else until we went to Zimbabwe. And it was fantastic place to tour. And I remember, we're really, really nervous when we seen the itinerary because you had to spend a week billeting with in people's houses, and we were going, well, what's that going to be like? It was absolutely fantastic. And you had your own personal maid who brought your clothes in all ironed and washed, and a cup of tea in the morning, pot of tea in to waking you up and all. And we got the tour of the farms with the farmers. It was just an incredible experience. And I mean, the cricket was superb as well. And they were a level above us, but and certainly in the first tour. I think the second tour we were closer to them.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But in the first tour, they had guys like Dave Houghton, Graham Hick, Ed O'Brandis, Alistair Campbell, boys like that who went on and made big names for themselves in Test cricket. So the cricket was great socially, but it was extraordinary because, as Louis alluded to it there, after the game it was a sing-song in the bar, and they loved it. The Zimbabweans loved it, and all the families and the friends all came along, and from a social point of view, it was amazing trips.
It's actually very interesting now, Gubley, you talk about that, and that would be something, Benny, it was synonymous with cricket then. You learned so much by talking to opposition players, and it doesn't happen now. And I remember with my own daughter, we were in Guyana for the T20, and the New Zealand team were staying in the same hotel. And do you remember? You probably don't. Fintan McAllister was kind of assisting, but he's a guitar player, and you'd know Fintan because he does some work now. And I said to Fintan, "Come, just start strumming a few tunes there." Well, gradually more and more came over. I'm outside having a little dunny, Benny, and the New Zealand manager's out there. This is exactly, he said, what we needed 8 days ago. Not now. We're out of the tournament. For people to actually let their hair down, be themselves, get their mind away from cricket, which they don't do half enough now. They don't do that half enough. They just become self-consumed, and it's really bad. So within the fabric, we played some bloody good teams over there. Good, and again, probably.
I think that was the start of it, where we started to compete with these teams. But that was the second tour.
The other thing is, the great thing about touring, Craig, is you learn about people. And again, you talk about the areas of the troubles, and you talk about what people went through. Like Alan Nelson on that tour became one of my best friends, my most revered, like what a cricketer. Probably a wee bit, amongst us, not underestimated, but perhaps because he didn't bowl that quick. But he was in the modern day world, he was like a philander for South Africa. But he came of his own on that trip.
Justin, we discussed captaincy with Alan earlier, but you took over from Alan as captain. Was captaincy on your radar at the time, or was it a pleasant surprise? Or
no, not particularly. It was a very pleasant surprise. So something that I think you probably, at the time, I probably didn't realise the sort of the gravitas or whatever you want to say attached to it. Because what's fascinating for me now is people who do speak to me and know me will say, "Oh, you were the former Irish cricket captain," but in those days I was actually, "You are the former Leicestershire player," and that's fantastic how it's changed, and that's how Irish cricket has changed and how it's revered. So I don't, and respected around the world. And I don't think it was great. I absolutely loved it. Don't get me wrong. I don't think I sort of realised the magnitude of it in those days. No, it was great. But as I said, big shoes to fill following Louis.
Oh, settle down. Well, look, I think the others are not to blow smoke up Benny's backside, but it was more how he was revered within the relationship, and he very quick. You can see it from his personality, in terms of bringing people together. And as he said himself, he had young guys that here were hungry to win, and that was the kind of game changer. And then it coincided with our first professional coach in Mike Hendrick, which was like a dream come true, certainly for me.
Yeah. Do you remember how Benny came captain for the very first time on the field of play? We were playing Malahide. Louis was captain. Benny, I think it was Benny's first or second game, or I can't remember how many games he'd played at this stage. And the ball was, we were fielding first. The ball was hit out to the boundary. Louis chased it, setting the example of captain, dove full length to try and stop it going for 4. Busted himself completely. You remember this, Louis? Yeah,
did my AC joint in my shoulder to save one run in a 3-day game, Benny. How stupid is that?
So before the game, there was no talk of a vice captain or anything like that. So Benny and me looked at each other, and I said, "Benny, you do it." And Benny says to me, "No, you do it." And I said, "No, you do it." And there's no selectors. There's nobody about close to us, so we didn't know what was going on. But anyway, Benny, as the main man, he got the job, and that was the very first time he captained the side, and done a great job after that.
Very good. So we're going to move into personal performances. Alan, you hit 4 centuries for Ireland, but maybe you haven't considered one of those your best innings for Ireland. Which one would you consider your best innings for Ireland?
Well, it was probably that match I alluded to earlier, that one against Zimbabwe. I don't know, as batters, some days you're just in a zone. I don't know what it was. I can't. If I could have bottled how I felt that day against a decent attack, but just the whole rounded article, and then a little bit like what Gubley talked about Lords. I got to 96 and blemmed one low, and Grant Flower took an unbelievable catch at extra cover. I've never been so disappointed. And kind of when you think about yourself, and I was more disappointed with having got to where you got to, and it just shows you where your mind can do silly buggers. I wanted to get it over in one go, wide half volley, bang, and Flower took an unbelievable catch at extra cover. But that in terms of that, and then there's only like one other that stood out. It was in against Scotland. The one for 122 second innings, and again a great game that we had in Dundee, because I was struggling a bit, and it was interesting. You're always just hearing things. I was walking around the ground, I kept getting caught, close to the wicket. Again, Scotland had some good spinners at the time, but technically wasn't playing it very well. And Alec O'Riordan, former great, kind of said to me, gave me a tip, as you'd often hear say golfers talk about. I got a tip on the putting green, and I went out and kind of executed what he kind of said, and it worked. And so that was really more because I could have sat in desperation with myself, but he as a former player, brilliant player, he kind of said, look, try this, and I did try it, and it worked in the second inning. So they'd be the two that would stand out.
Garfield, I alluded this earlier in the introduction. You once took 9 for 113. Now, even more surprising, 43.2 overs, and apparently the last 35 overs were unchanged. What do you remember that match, and what happened to the 10th wicket?
Shorter and shorter.
Yeah, that was Sunday in Scotland. It was in Edinburgh, and our bowling attack for that game was Paul McCrum, Alan Nelson, Noel Nelson, myself, all for Warringstown. Our club was Warringstown. Then Alan Lewis and Angus Dunlop were the sort of the 6 bowlers, and Paul McCrum got injured early on in his bowling in the game, so he was off the field. So we were up against it, and I don't know whether you remember, Alan, but Ian Phillip and Bruce Patterson put on about 170, 180 for the first wicket, and we were in a spot of bother. But so the plan was that I would bowl at one end, and they would rotate the bowling at the other end, and that's really what happened. And it just clicked. Things clicked. Everything I tried that day sort of worked, and there was a couple of left-handers come in. I love bowling at left-handers, and they didn't last very long. And and then Big Nelly, Alan Nelson spoiled the party. He took, I think, the 7th or the 8th wicket, Scottish wicket. It was a great day for me personally, and I was brought back. I remember specifically, I was brought back down to earth very quickly because the next game was a club game against North at Armagh, and got smacked around all over the place, which was great to get your feet back on the ground. But so that was first class. That was the best first class bowling performance at a single innings that year. Second was Courtney Walsh, who took an 8-4, and third was Malcolm Marshall, who took a 7-4. So Harrison, Walsh, Marshall. Yeah, sounds good.
And Justin, your high score is 79 against the Dutch, but I read somewhere that your 75 not out was probably your finest batting performance, and the analysis at the time said you possibly were robbed of a century due to rain. Is that correct? Or?
I'm not sure that's correct. As we all know, 25 runs is a long thing, a quarter of the runs. I remember most that day was Steve Smith. He got 90 not out. Yeah. So I think he was probably the one who was actually robbed of that. Yeah. My best performance. Gubley won't thank me for this. When I got the legendary Garfield Harrison out. Let's see if he can remember that.
I don't remember that, Benny.
I bowled off spin doing my impressions of him for North Leinster.
Yeah.
I got him out, and at lunchtime, his little lip was like this. He was mortified, as he should be.
And great performances also mean great partnerships, and I believe the Lewis-Harrison partnership had the equal highest partnership for any wicket for Ireland at one stage. Do you remember that day?
It was Hamilton Crescent, Gubley, wasn't it? That ground, that the wee bit of slope. I think when you say equal to Gubley, I think was most annoyed that I declared at the time when we equaled it. I said we better not surpass it. We won't be one for a record. But I think it held for quite some time.
Again, we were in a spot of bother that day. I mean, we were like 30 for 3. 30
Correct.
I know somebody was injured. I think it was Stephen Smith. He couldn't bat, so we were in a spot of bother. And luckily, it was a nice pitch that day. I remember the wicket. But Louis declared, and then we're walking off the pitch, and Derek Scott come over and says, "What did you declare for? You're equal with the record. You should have kept the one." And Louis
wanted to go back out again, Benny. Somebody wanted to go back out again.
Probably that's flair and inventiveness for you. You see,
that's really why Alan Lewis lost to Justin Benson, because of that.
1997 was a big year for many reasons. Justin, all Irish cricket fans are familiar with the tale of the 2007 World Cup. You've touched on this earlier. 10 years earlier, there was a chance of getting there and fell at the last hurdle. What do you remember of that tournament?
I think we touched on it earlier, and I think we probably all feel exactly the same way. I mean, it was just one of those awful sort of, we played good cricket. We had a really, really good team, good morale, everything. And, on the particular pitch where they played the final matches, it was just not conducive to playing proper cricket. Anyway, I mean, even the quick bowlers like Pato and Iggy, if you nicked it or glanced it down to fine leg, it may, if you're lucky, get past the inner circle. That's it. I mean, we didn't even put a third man or fine leg. There was just no point. If you nicked it, you got one. Just, you could almost be run out doing it. So it wasn't there. And we, I always maintained that we should have beaten Kenya. We should have beaten them relatively comfortably. That would have taken us through. And I think Scotland came into it with sort of an attitude of they felt they were probably quite lucky to be there with their team, and they probably thought, let's just give it a go and see what happens. Whereas for us, we were at another level, and we were probably already thinking about the World Cup final. And it just didn't happen, and it was awful.
I think probably we missed a trick in '97 because, knowing that now that we spoke about the conditions that we went in monsoon season, we were playing on low, slow mats. In today's day and age, Hendo would have been out there a year beforehand watching matches played on these mats, what sort of team you'd bring. It would have been quite ridiculous, but you could have easily not have brought for those conditions Mark Patterson, Ryan Eagleton, because you may as well have had. Well, Benny didn't bowl any of his bloody dibbly-dobblies when we were over there, which was ridiculous. But we should have had Matt Dwyer, Greg, anyone who was 4'2", like Scotland, a fella called Kennedy, who you just couldn't hit off the square because the ball never got above 6 inches off the ground. It was largely a pathetic tournament in many ways, but the ultimate prize which Scotland got was the World Cup in '99 in England, which was, for us to miss that was so. And the boys will talk. I couldn't play. I got an injury in the game before, on a finger injury that I played. We really should have beaten Kenya. That was we missed out on getting to the final.
Yeah, that's a great segue to the next question, because I was going to ask Garfield. This match against Scotland was actually your last match for Ireland. Did the match bring your plans forward, or were you always planning to retire?
No. I mean, if we had qualified, I was going to try and carry on. Obviously, my wife wouldn't, maybe Maurice wouldn't thank me for saying that, but that was my thought at the time. But it was going to be difficult to stay in that side because it was one of the best Irish sides that I played in during my career. But it was a really dark day for us, that against Scotland. We had played really well throughout that tournament. We prepared. Our preparation was excellent. We've been led by Mike Hendrick, who was a revelation for us, with a very professional approach to that. Everyone had their own fitness programs and all sorts of things beforehand. We're talking about our dietary requirements and what we need to eat and what we need to drink and all of that. That was really the first taste of it was for that trip. But it was a dark day. The Scottish game actually ran over 2 days, guys. I don't know whether you remember or not, but the first day I think only got 20 overs in, something like that, and we were in a reasonable position. They hadn't lost too many wickets, but it rained then, real heavy, like monsoon rain, and then we were due. This is the thing that sticks in my mind. We were due to fly back home the day after the game, and I remember distinctly the second morning of the game when we did eventually get the game played, that there was officials running around our changing room wanting us to know what flights we wanted to get back home. And I was thinking to myself, this is not the time to be thinking about flights back home. And you know, it maybe took a wee bit of the edge off us because we didn't play as we could in that game. We'd beaten Scotland in a warm-up game. We'd beaten them comfortably. It wasn't even a contest. And I just wonder, you know, and we'd also a problem, if you remember, guys, we'd also a problem throughout the competition with wides. And we you know, most games we bowled a lot of wides, and we got away with it. So we had, but in the final, well, in the third and fourth place playoff, we again bowled a lot of wides, and they just got a wee bit away from us. And then in reply, every time our batters went for a boundary shot, it went straight to the Scottish fielder. They didn't even have to move. But just I watched the video back there a week ago. It was just straight to the guys. They didn't have to move. So everything we tried that day just didn't work. And I think perhaps, you know, the occasion got to us.
I'm always a great believer, you know, whenever you watch all these global tournaments and all that sort of stuff, every team, no matter how good they are, you watch the Cricket World Cup, the Football World Cup, Rugby World Cup, everyone has a bad game. And what you want to do is get that bad game out of the way early. And unfortunately, we saved it for, you know, and we can't even sit here and say, you know, we got beaten by a better team or they outperformed us, because they didn't. And they weren't a better team. It was just, we picked a terrible day to do that.
So disappointing result, absolutely. But interesting things were soon to happen in '97 with Alan. You apparently had a South African lodger start to stay with you, and his name was Hansie Cronje. He was coming to guest. He's coming to guest for Ireland. What do you remember of that period?
Again, it'd be interesting to hear that. I just thought, I always remember, I don't know whether the lads remember, we were playing Middlesex. Hendo blew a gasket. We had a situation which was commonplace. We'd arrive out to, the match was in Clontarf, lads would be there having a cup of coffee, 10 o'clock. And next thing, Hansie Cronje is out of the changing room, tapping the ball up and down on the bat. Hendo lost it. Why does it take an effing salad? One of the great, boom, boom, boom. And you're sat here drinking, get into the chair, you know, blah, blah, blah. But Hansie, do you remember that time? Two things are, one, I was batting with him personally at the other end when he was absolutely stone cold plumb and was given not out, went on to get 94 not out.
I remember that.
But he also said, and I always remember this, and I remember I was batting with him. Decker had gone away unbelievably in a hurry. And interestingly as well, Benny, Gatting put us in, if you remember, because it was a miserly day. We probably would have bowled. But anyway, inwardly I was delighted we were batting. But that's just another day's work. But Hansie came down, the spinners were on weeks, and he said, how do you think we're going? Well, we were 123 for 2 off 23 overs. I said, well, we tipple along 3 and 4 and over. No, Hansie said, I want 6 this over. I said, what do you mean? I want 6 singles this over. I'm going back on strike. And for the first time ever, gaps became what I was thinking subconsciously. And we got 6. And then he said, that was easy, wasn't it? And I went, yeah, that was relatively straightforward because, you had the gap one round the corner. You could play it down to long on. And he said, I've seen more one-day games lost in this period where people take their foot off the gas. And he was kind of revered. He was revered by everyone around. Just such a nice guy. It was a humbling experience when I saw that he died.
And Justin,
but he was a great influence on the team, and he was fantastic.
And Justin, you were the captain, obviously, on that match. What are your memories of that and captaining the side?
Isn't it interesting that we'd just come off the back of playing full-time cricket? We'd just finished a tour. We were playing every day, so we were practicing, we were doing all that sort of stuff. The Middlesex lads would have just been indoors playing at Lord's indoor practicing, and then they came over to Clontarf, sort of a nice, slow Irish sort of wicket. So it just shows that if you practice every day and if you're in that focus and that mind, how easy things become. And that's a lot of the difference between the pros and what the young guys get now. Playing every day is massive, and it's what held Irish cricket back. talent is absolutely there. But if you're only playing one match a weekend, and then you're bobbing over to go and play at the Oval, which is like quick and goes through, or you go to Sussex and you know, you've got no chance. And that was a really good example of, you know, we beat them, you know, we genuinely beat them. It wasn't, there are certain bits that you can say this, that, and that, but you know, we outplayed them in every single department and fully deserved it. But Hansi was a massive influence on that. I think he gave us that extra little bit of, you know, because he walked into bat and everyone shut up. Yeah, there was no thing, and he was he was a good guy and great for Irish cricket.
We could talk about that for ages. Definitely the 80s and 90s, there's plenty of stories to tell and great matches played. But I just want to wrap up today's show by asking each of you the context of where the 80s, 90s fits within where Irish cricket is today, and how you see that movement from a period in which you said was groundbreaking or the first of a kind to where we are today in full membership of ICC. Alan, we'll start with you.
It's remarkable. I think, like, if someone said to you 20 years ago, there's going to be a switch and Ireland has got test match status, you'd go, like, are you dreaming? Like, what are you talking about? Like, don't be silly. But, you know, having kind of watched the side from afar in 07, I think it's one of the things, you know, often when you retire, you don't want to be, you move away, move on. It's someone else's journey at that point. I didn't go and watch an Irish game for 7 years after I retired. Didn't go and watch an Irish game because I kind of felt my time is gone. But once an era of your kind of once they left, then the Porterfields, you know, all those sorts of things. And A.D. Burrell came in as the coach, and I developed a very good friendship with him. And we used to meet for coffee, you know, once a month because he'd kind of pick brains more locally about different things that would happen. So you kind of felt a little bit of involvement, but I was involved with the rugby. So I watched 07 from afar, but 11, I was there. I had 6 of the best days of my life when we played England and obviously beat England in Bangalore. And then that match against India, which was, but just the hype. And then there was because I was lucky enough to be kind of commentating as well with TMS, and that was a great bit of fun with old pals. But the other part about it was just there was a little bit of envy there, I have to say. I kind of pretend there isn't, but I was going, wow. The Irish team were brilliant. Like I went to a fielding set. I went to watch them doing a fielding session. That after the game, they did disappoint. Oh no, they'd beaten who did they play? I forget. They might have lost anyway, before the England game. And they had this feeling. They were like John. They were hitting the stump once every 2 times from 25 meters. I thought this is ridiculous. They were just so good, and you know, just the level of their performance and what they've achieved. I have massive time for so many of them, with whatever and they've made me very proud as a former player. And now you're seeing now. Funnily enough, there's a band of young cricketers that I want to be a professional cricketer. I want to be the first that does this. I want to be like what Benny talked about when the youngsters came into our team. They just give you a freshness. And I think I was involved in selection. We missed that at the end of an era coming into tech. We hung on to people a little bit too long. And that's often a difficult discussion to have at times, but you have to do it. And the younger boys that have come in, they've done unbelievable.
Garfield, what about you? How do you look back on this era and where we are today?
Well, Craig, I think you have to look. You know, you have to look back first. I mean, I first started playing in 1983. In 1983, there was no coach. The captain, he done everything, and there was no money. So, you know, you got, you know, at the end of the day's play, you got 10 or 20 quid to go and get yourself something to eat. And of course, you didn't know nothing about nutrition. So you went and you got a burger and chips or a fish supper, or, you know, and washed it down with maybe 2 or 3 pints of Guinness. And, you know, that was your nutrition. You know, we didn't know anything about anything. And then we progressed and our first sort of a coach stroke manager, I think, was Michael Reith, who done it maybe for a season. But again, he wasn't full time. He had another job. So you know, we all worked and we played cricket when we weren't working. So it was a very, very amateurish setup. Then things started to progress. Sort of in the early 90s, we had Les Bishop, who helped us a wee bit for...
Les Lennon.
Les Lennon, correct. Sorry, Les.
Oh,
Get past that, you bastard. Bonk.
Les Lennon, yeah. With Les Lennon, who helped us a wee bit. And then we had Joey O'Mara come in. John Wills, then he took the reins. We were getting more professional approach. And this was in the 90s, early 90s. And then after John, he brought in, actually, we went to Kenya. It was 94 was Kenya?
94, yeah.
Yeah, we went to Kenya and he brought in a sports psychologist, Craig Mahoney, which was our first dabble at that. I quite enjoyed it. Others, I don't think, maybe did. And we'd also then, when we got to Kenya, Dave Houghton flew in. And he was going to be our batting coach, but like he arrived the day before our first game, and he was our batting coach. Yeah. So what's Dave Houghton going to do for us over a 2-3 week period when we're there? But on that trip as well, before the tournament even started, Stephen Ward broke his arm or broke his wrist in a fielding drill that we were doing out in the middle. He run into the roller. He was going for a catch, a fielding, and a fielding drill, run into the roller, broke his wrist. Good night. That's the end of the tournament for Stephen. So we were still very amateurish. And then Mike Hendrick got the job, and then everything changed almost immediately. Mike was full time. He didn't, that was his job, and I had the pleasure of sharing an office with him for 4 years in Belfast, and he done a fantastic job. And we were never better prepared for any tournament in my day than we were for Malaysia and that Kuala Lumpur trip. But I mean, at the start of at the very beginning, even the first 10 years, there was no money. Cricket Ireland or the Irish Cricket Union, no money. I mean, I remember coming back from Scotland, from a Scotland game from Edinburgh, and we were flown back in a Shorts 360 Royal Mail plane. We were sitting in the back with the mail sacks at the back of the plane, mail sacks all around us. I mean, it was hilarious. There was nothing there. We were very amateurish. And now when you see where they are now, it's just tremendous. I mean, there was no preparation really in the early days either, Craig, because I remember going to play Sussex in the Benson and Hedges or the Nat West at Hove on a Wednesday, and we'd play club games on the Saturday, and the club games were in Ballymena or Woodvale or North or Warringstown or whatever, and you were on a low, slow pitches. And then we went to Hove to play in a Nat West game, and their opening attack was Imran Khan, and at the other end was Gareth LaRue. Now, if you've ever been to Hove, it's like playing on concrete, the pitch. It is rock hard. I mean, it was such a contrast from playing our club game on a Saturday to playing at Hove on the Monday or on the Wednesday against Imran Khan and Gareth LaRue. So the journey has been fantastic. I mean, in September there, I was down for a few games, and you see guys like David Delaney who had his own personal coach. Simon Johnson was looking after his specific job for that week, was just looking after David Delaney and making sure everything was grand. So, I've come on such a long, long way, and it's fantastic to see. And we're, couldn't be more delighted for the guys, and hopefully they will continue to grow and grow.
Very good. And I think
I would just say one thing from my point of view is I was a bit like Louis. Once I finished in '93, I stepped away from cricket almost completely. And something that I've learned, and it is not to be underestimated, all the stuff that the guys are saying is absolutely right. I think the bit that Irish cricket needs to appreciate also is the administration that goes on. Having moved away, having played sport professionally, having moved away, and now I am an administrator. I mean, that's what I do, and it's filing, it's organising this, flying around the world doing stuff. It's ball-breaking stuff, and you need it. None of it's possible without the administration. I think the group that Cricket Ireland has together, who from the CEO downwards, the administrative part of it seems to be absolutely fantastic, and that is such a key aspect to allow the guys to take all that rubbish that we had away and just allow the guys to concentrate on what they do best, which is play cricket. And I think that is it's the one thing I've learned from moving away. It's the hardest transition I had was moving into administration. It's really difficult.
Yeah, I'm glad Benny's mentioned that, because sometimes fortune, call it what a little bit of luck, whatever way you want to look at it, but Warren's direction of the organization, as Benny has said, second to none, took a lot of risks. Would have been easy to drift down the area of county cricket, this, that, and the other. No. We want to be the 10th best international team in the world. We want to be this. That was the strategic direction that we were going to play as a country, and he was dog determined that would happen, and led the ship. And I'm delighted that it's Benny that's actually mentioned that, because it's so true. The backup, and you could even go back, Benny, to initially the work that John Wright did, who you'd have known very well, and Matt Hyde, and all of those, and all the predecessors who, there's so many to mention that have done that. But I think they all do it, and that's the one thing, Craig, that never should be underestimated: the voluntary effort that people do for the love of what that, because it's ridiculous, really, for a country where cricket is probably 4th or 5th on the radar, that they're playing at this level is just mad, really. If you're putting a hat on them.
It's fantastic.
There you go, 3 wise men. You see, we've just solved all of that.
3 wise men. I think Garfield gave the name to the episode, which we'll call it the Postmen. I think we'll call it.
Hoover.
Do you remember? Remember the media used to focus on Decker all the time, Benny.
Yeah.
You're the fellow that wraps up the cattle in the abattoir. Do you remember that?
They loved that, didn't they?
They loved that, didn't they? You break the necks. Boom.
Yeah. There was all that story about him putting heads between their legs and snapping their neck and all that sort of stuff. And that's
those were the days.
Them were the days. That's great.
Nice way to finish that, Craig. Those were the days.
Those were the days. Those were the days indeed. Well, thank you very much for that. We can talk for ages, but we'll have to wrap up there. So thank you to Alan Lewis.
Thank you, Craig. Really enjoyed. Great to see Benny. I've seen obviously Gubbly, but Benny, you got to get back, my son. We're going to organise it. Don't you worry.
Thank you to Garfield Harrison.
Craig, thank you very much. Thanks for asking us on your show. You're doing a great job, and everybody in Cricket Ireland is doing a fantastic job, and wish you all success this year and many years to come.
Thank you, and thank you to Justin over in England.
I just reiterate what Garfield said there. It's been great, stirring up some fantastic memories, and I have to give a sort of special shout out to the village, and if any of them are watching this, love you all at Malahide, and as Louis said, I'll get back shortly.
Don't forget to bring your top golf clubs, Benny.
I'm not playing against you two. You're too good.
Thank you all. This has been the Green Ball Show, and we hope you enjoyed watching. Thank you. Goodbye.